We are back from the short break to come back and rank all future Tottenham managers. Now you can see on your screen now, but we have 5 tiers to rank these managers into. We have 10 managers, as well as a couple more that I've got on my phone that aren't on the tier list that we'll quickly rank right at the end. The tiers we have are: get him in, yes please, not the worst appointment, so extremely mid, and I'd prefer Nuno back. Considering what we said about Nuno today, yeah, I think that's probably fair enough. I was sitting there thinking if I could come up with any good references for any of these, any good Spurs references. I was thinking about I'm just not going to make another reference to that season when we won the Premier League because you'll end up believing the thing. I did think about it, but then I thought you're just not going to want to put anyone in the tier because you're not going to want to say it yourself. So yes, we will we will move on from there. And we will come to the tier list. Now, which manager should we go for first? Let's start with Thomas Frank, obviously in charge at Brentford at the moment, doing a really, really good job. Where do you put him out of these 5 tiers?
Yeah, so I'll probably put him smack bang in the middle, to be honest. Not the worst appointment. Look, he's a good manager, you just mentioned, don't get me wrong. What he's doing with Brentford is great, but obviously he's not proven at a bigger club. Look at Nuno, he did really well with Wolves right until the end. Comes to a big club and then he fails completely. So I'm worried it would be maybe a similar thing with him. I think sticking him in that middle tier would probably be quite fair.
All right, fair enough. He's one that I kind of said the same thing with Potter. I feel like he needs a middling move before he goes up to the next level. I know that's harsh on Brentford, but go to a West Ham. Go to, I know we might see it as a little bit below him possibly.
But a bigger infrastructure.
But come to Leicester, please. Please. A club like that, maybe.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
An Aston Villa, I know they've got Emery, so it's probably not going to happen, but a club who's bigger in size so that you can sort of test yourself before you go to the highest level. So into not the worst appointment, that is fair enough. Next up, let's go for Ruben Amorim, the current sporting manager.
Yeah. I'd also, again, put him probably in not the worst appointment, solely for the fact he's a young and upcoming coach, which for Tottenham is something that we always seem to look at. A guy that can possibly do a rebuild rather than a win now type of guy like Conte and Jose. My slight issue with him would maybe be because it is in the Portuguese league. Obviously, you've got the top teams of Porto, Benfica, Sporting, that are always going to be in that top half. And if you're not, then you're clearly doing something big wrong. So I think in that not the worst appointment is probably quite fair because, again, we just don't really know what he can do at a top club, especially in the Premier League as well.
Yeah, I think that's more than fair enough. You know, he is currently 4th in the Portuguese league, which isn't excellent, and he's quite a long way behind the pack as well. He's 8 points off second place, 18 points off first place in Benfica. But obviously he has been doing well in Europe, so not the worst appointment. Fair enough. I think he's a good manager. I do think he's a good manager, but
I do agree. I think he's one more for the future though. Maybe 5-10 years, you'll see what he can actually do.
Again, he needs to go somewhere that isn't the Portuguese league.
Would you take him at Leicester? I know I'm becoming the interviewer now.
Absolutely, mate. I'm taking anyone. I'm taking Roy from down the chippy at this point.
Roy Hodgson.
Sure, you know what? Sure. Genuinely, he's a good manager. I do think he'd probably go to somebody a little bit above us. I know Atleti aren't really the kind of club he possibly would go to because of the style of manager that Diego Simeone is, but that level of club, go to somebody who's a little bit smaller before Johnny. That's kind of
similar to Frank
Atleti. But go to maybe somewhere in Italy. Could he get a job at an Inter? Somewhere like that possibly before you were, and I know saying Inter below the Premier League is possibly a little bit unfair, or below the top 6 of the Premier League is possibly a little bit unfair, but I think it possibly is justified looking at the pool the Premier League does have nowadays. So I think Amorim would need a move before a club like this, but good manager nonetheless. Let's go for Enrique now, a known winner. How do you rate him?
So Enrique was definitely my number one personal target before obviously the situation over the last couple of days. I put him in yes please for now, so the second tier. Just because, as you say, he's a good manager. I think he would be able to commit to this sort of rebuild as well. He plays decent football. We saw what he did with Barca and stuff like that. So yeah, I think putting him in that yes please, he is a big name as well. So he would have possibly that pulling power if we were trying to get a couple of big players. So yeah, I think that's the right tier for him.
Does the fact that he is a no winner, does that scare you?
A little bit, because we're almost jinxing ourselves with what we had with Jose, what we had with Conte. It does, but again, I hope he would be coming in to commit to more of a rebuild rather than splashing all the cash and winning something within the next year as much as I want it.
Yeah, and also that's not going to happen because you're Spurs. Just keep getting him in there. Any Spurs fan listening to this at this point has gone, I'm fed up with the interview. I've clicked off. I'm done. But we're gonna keep moving on, and we'll move on to Stevie Cooper. I pass the City ground every day on the way into college, and I look at it and go, can we win there once in a while? Stevie Cooper. You might lose some of your female fan base if you were to appoint him. I'm not saying he's ugly, but what do we think of Stevie Cooper?
Look, what he's doing with Forest at home, he's great. Away form is
awful.
Nothing short of shocking. So I think he'd go in the extremely mid tier because he's exactly that. He's an extremely mid manager. We were linked with him a couple of weeks ago. A couple of reports coming out about us possibly considering him as a target, and the whole fan base are a bit like, really?
Yeah.
A bit the same with Frank, although I think Frank's a little bit better. With Nuno, you just think, why are we going for this guy? He's doing okay with Forest, as I say, in terms of home form, although he has signed about 30 players or something stupid like that. But as I say, he's just an extremely mid manager, probably similar to Frank and Amorim as well. He needs to go to a bit of a bigger club like the Aston Villas, maybe somewhere in France, somewhere in Spain, just to prove that he can actually manage a bigger club before taking sort of that massive jump up to one of the big clubs.
He's one I could definitely see going to possibly a West Ham or somewhere like that, get a move like
possibly
that,
if Moyes goes,
and then see if you can do it at that level. I don't think you'd jump ship mid-season, but if they were to sort of let Moyes go at the end of the season, I think that possible move could work out. I do also think he does enjoy the Forest project. But yeah, just
he got on there, didn't he? So
he did.
He probably
I probably should have put a trigger warning out there though before talking about him. If you I don't feel like there's a good end to that sentence, so I'm just going to stop it there. We'll move on because I don't want to get cancelled for saying bad things about Cooper and the way he looks. Let's move on to a fan favourite. We've already discussed him in the podcast. It's Mauricio Pochettino.
I'd put him in probably the yes please, solely for the fact of what he did. Now, I am probably in the minority here where I don't really want Poch back. Now, look, what he did for our club was amazing, and I appreciate what he did for us. But because of he was sacked for a reason at the end of the day. I know I said previously he shouldn't have been sacked, and I still agree with that. But he was sacked for a reason in the poor form. And the thing I worry most about Poch is it's not his football or anything like that. Does Daniel Levy go back to his old ways of not spending any money or spending pennies compared to what other clubs are spending? Does Poch again just become the yes man and sort of does whatever he's told kind of thing by Levy? He doesn't demand sort of players and stuff as Conte or Jose would. So the only thing I worry is we are taking a step back essentially sort of for 4 or 5 years almost and admitting that there is that big mistake. And I don't know whether the board will admit that they did make that mistake by stacking Poch in the first place. So put him in yes please, I think is fair, because look, if he probably would be in my top 3 to take back, but we just need assurances that things would change and he would actually have the backing that Conte had, that Jose had, even Nuno, because he signed a couple of decent players as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, we just need to make sure that he gets that availability.
Would you be scared that if he did? I know you've kind of touched on it there. Would you be scared that if he did come back, then it would be the case of before, where the club just don't invest in players anymore? Or was that a circumstantial thing where you were building a new stadium and you needed to put the money into that rather than into the playing staff?
I would be worried. Yeah, I would. I think it comes down to because the football that Poch played, and we were winning a lot of games, and we got to the Champions League final. I think Levy saw it as, oh, if I just let this guy do his thing, I don't need to spend any money. And the board probably sort of agreed with him there. So
Oh,
you think, why would we spend money if we're doing it all anyway? Getting to Champions League finals, sort of hitting Champions League football getting top four every single season. So I do worry that it's just going to slip back into that idea that Poch will probably get us there anyway. So why do we need to bother to spend 50, 60 million, 70 million pounds on a top player if he's just going to do it anyway without them, just taking the sort of a little bit longer and a bit harder to get there.
fair enough. Well, there we go. Poch wanted back, but not the first option. So I'm interested to see who that will be. Let's go for possibly another man that does need a bigger move before he were to move to a club like Spurs. Roberto De Zerbi, another London big club nicking a manager from Brighton this season.
Yeah, he falls into sort of the bracket of the Frank and the Amarim and the Cooper. We've sort of discussed it already.
Uh-huh.
That he needs, I think, a bit more time to prove himself because look, he's come in and he's doing wonders with Brighton. Don't get me wrong, where they are in the league, he's doing well. But again, does that automatically mean that 10 months after he signed for Brighton that he's ready to take up the big clubs in the world? Really, again, you have to consider the fact that he's probably signed a decent deal with Brighton, maybe 3, 4 years. So there is going to be a big fee there to pay as well,
Yeah.
which again I'm not sure whether we would pay when you see all the free managers on the market at the moment. Your Poch, your Enrique, your Nagelsmann's
Uh-huh.
managers like that. So I put him in not the worst appointment
Okay.
because at the end of the day he's doing well with Brighton. But I just think he needs to prove himself possibly that little bit more. Maybe again, if he does what he does with Brighton over the next 2, 3 seasons, then I consider him definitely, but not the worst appointment for now.
Okay, fair enough. There we go. De Zerbi into not the worst appointment. And now we're left with four very polar opposite managers. We've got Schroeder, we've got Sampaoli. Sampaoli is the manager of Napoli, isn't he? Yeah. Nagelsmann and Tite. We'll start with Tite, the former Brazilian manager. Where would you put him?
I probably put him in extremely mid,
Okay.
um, solely for the fact that look, if you're not playing well with Brazil's national team, then you're definitely doing something wrong. I think I could get something out of the Brazil national team with the
Probably.
players they have. Your
Uh-huh.
Neymar, your Vinicius Junior, your Richarlison, of course. Um, again, he hasn't. I'm looking through his previous manager history here. There's no big clubs. Pretty well. Okay, I don't want to offend anyone here, but there's no European clubs that he's done well at or he's actually managed at all. So for him to come in straight to a Big Six Premier League side, I think would be a huge jump for him. Um, Even going through the clubs that he has played at, his points per game ratios aren't incredible.
No.
Um, so again, he's a little bit older. Would he be one of those managers that would be willing to go for rebuild? I'm not sure. I think he's in his 60s already. So is he willing to sacrifice the next sort of 4 or 5 years of his life to
Probably not.
dedicated to rebuilding Spurs? As you say, probably not. So I think extremely mid. I wouldn't really be too interested if we got him.
Fair enough. I did realise I said Sampaoli before. I meant Spalletti. Let me off a mill. We've touched on Spalletti there, the manager of Napoli. Another man who's in his 60s, 64, but been doing an incredible job with Napoli this season. Now, this isn't me saying he would move. For the record, I don't think he would leave this Napoli side because I think he would be stupid if he did, to be honest. But where would you put him?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. There's almost zero chance that he leaves Napoli, especially
Mm.
now with him being so close to winning the Serie A. To be fair to him, but say hypothetically it came to the end of the season and we were still looking for a manager, then I'd probably put him in the second tier, the
Okay.
yes please. look, what he's doing with Napoli is great. He's having a really good season. Obviously, Osimhen's playing really well. That Georgian winger that I'm not even going to
Kavicha
begin to pronounce.
Kvaratskhelia.
Yeah, I'm not even going to begin to pronounce his surname. Obviously, they're balling out, so fair play to them. Again, he's doing really well for Napoli. He's not going to leave them at the moment, but I would still take him solely for the fact that he does seem like a decent manager. But then it comes down similar to Tite, because he is older, even older than Tite. Is he willing to sacrifice that 3-4 years of his life to him almost being 70 to help rebuild Spurs? I'm not sure, but solely for his managing and what he's doing with Napoli, I put him in yes, please.
Yeah, and I will actually offer you something. If he were to bring everybody's favourite Georgian winger, the only one anyone's ever heard of, Kavicha Kvaratskhelia, if he were to bring him with him to Spurs, would that make him the first option? Would that put him in front of whoever that first option is? Because obviously, I know you've got Son out there, but he hasn't particularly been performing this season. Obviously, Kvaratskhelia is an excellent player. And possibly, I know Napoli are wanting about 180 million this summer, which is mental. So I'm not particularly saying that it's realistic. Well, it's not realistic. Levy's not going to spend that much in one window, never mind on one player. But if he were to bring him with you, if he were to bring him with him, not with you, you're not the new Spurs manager, would that make him your first choice?
No.
Wow.
And now, don't get me wrong, he's a great player, great player, but I don't know if we can rely so much on one player. Now, Kane, for example, we rely on him a hell of a lot, and he is a great player because he does everything. He does playmaking, he does the scoring, he does defending even at times. But same with any player that comes in, there is no guarantee that they will work in the Premier League. Now, do I think he will work in the Premier League? Yes.
Yeah.
He probably will, but I'm not sure whether he'd go just because he's bringing in that one player. I'm not sure whether he'd go to number one in my list. He would go second, though. He would go second.
Yeah, I think Cavaradonna is just incredible. And he's one of those players as well that, it's super off topic. One of those players that you've watched for ages and you'd be like, he's going to have a big move. And then he does and it works out and you're like, I'm so happy.
Yeah.
One person whose big move for him possibly didn't work out, he moved to Ajax in the summer. And it didn't particularly go very well for him, did it? Schroeder, what do we make of this one?
Yeah, I prefer Nuno back straight in there. I think although it's become a lot more competitive recently, I think you'd agree with sort of the likes of PSV, final teams like that, with them becoming a little bit better. It has heated up a bit more. But if you're not winning things with Ajax, if you're not playing well with Ajax in the Eredivisie, you're obviously doing something very, very, very wrong. I think he had a good start with them, but then it sort of really tailed off,
them
and then he
fourth
started
in the table.
Yeah, he started falling out with the board, the players, a bit like Conte, to be fair. But I genuinely would prefer Nuno back over him. I just don't think he's the right manager for us in any way, shape, or form, really.
Well, last time you must have went through about 7 or 8 options before you got to Nuno. This time, if you get through 9 options, there we go. Nuno, you've got the job back. Well done. Try not to make every Spurs fan hate you this time. And then last but not least, there's one manager left and there's a one tier with absolutely nobody in it. So I can almost guarantee where this guy's going to go. He's been recently sacked by Bayern Munich, with them deciding to bring Thomas Tuchel in, and it's Julian Nagelsmann.
I knew you'd leave him to the end for this exact reason.
Watch time.
Exactly. Nagelsmann, yeah, he's only going in that top tier. Get him in. I struggle to see why we would not go full out for this man, because look, he's a great manager. I think he was at Hoffenheim, then Leipzig, and then obviously he got his big move to Bayern. Fun fact: we were interested in him when we originally sacked Poch in 2019, I think it was. But I think then again we would have had to have paid Leipzig off, and I don't think Levy was prepared to do that with Jose sort of there and waiting. And then when we sacked Jose as well, he was probably our number one option. Then obviously he ended up going to Bayern. And as a young German manager, you're going to take the opportunity, aren't you, to
Yeah.
manage the biggest sort of German club in history. So fair play. You're always going to take the Bayern job over the Spurs job. But I think the way he's been treated with Bayern over the last few days is nothing short of awful. He's even been sort of spoken about that he was a Spurs fan when he was younger. So you think, why would we not take this guy? I think we should be doing everything possible to get him in. He's a top manager. He is that definition of a rebuild manager. He's the perfect fit in every way. He plays good football. He's adaptive with his tactics and stuff like that. So just get him in, please.
Yeah, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, he works. Being a Spurs fan as a child, Nagelsmann, I'm sorry, I'll pay for your therapy, please, anything. I'm sorry, mate. We will go through a couple more that I don't want to say I forgot to put on the tier list, but I didn't feel like were, I don't want to say credible, but a couple of lower options. Before we do get into the lower options, though, I want to go for the man who has obviously gone on to replace Nagelsmann, who was apparently supposed to be coming to London for talks with Spurs this week. Tuchel, where would he go on this list if he was still available?
Yeah, so correct. He was due in London on Tuesday for talks with us. I think Bayern essentially saw that we were going for it. It may even be a tactic from Daniel Levy, and fair fucking play if that is. He's sort of made it look like we're going after Tuchel, and then they've sacked Nagelsmann because they wanted Tuchel and all that jazz. As for having him as the manager, I'm debating whether putting him in not the worst or yes please, solely for the fact is the football that Tottenham have always been known for is that sort of attacking, free-flowing, high-pressing football, and that is not Tuchel ball whatsoever. Tuchel is pretty much Conte just reincarnated. So
Yeah.
I'd probably put him in that for not the worst appointment. Because don't get me wrong, he's a great manager, but he's no different to Conte. It's another ex-Chelsea manager, which I'm getting sick of at this point. So probably, yeah, not the worst appointment. I think there are a lot of Spurs fans, I get the gist, just sort of speaking to the fans, that are actually quite happy that Bayern snapped him up when they did, because I'm not sure whether he would have had the full backing of all of the fans.
No. And then, before we go through three quick fire ones that I imagine are all going to be quite near the end of this tier list, where does Conte go? Where does keeping Conte actually land on this tier list?
As I mentioned earlier in the pod, I am probably one of the only people that want Conte for now to stay, just because he's speaking the truth. And I think deep down, he's a good manager. We've just caught him at such a wrong time in his life. Personally, obviously, he's had friends, 3, 4 friends pass away. He had major surgery himself. So I think we've just caught him at literally the worst time we possibly could. He's living in a hotel with his family out in Italy. So he's obviously being torn apart by that. I would like to keep him, so I put him in yes, please. But I do think because of his comments, the players are really starting to turn on him, and especially the fans. The fans are not happy. I know a lot of my family that are Tottenham fans sort of want him gone as quick as possible. So yes, please for me, but I know a lot of people will disagree with that.
Fair enough. And then we'll go through three fairly quick fire ones, who again possibly aren't ones for the here and now, but possibly could be ones to look towards the future. Will Still.
This guy is a running meme on Twitter, I swear.
Yes.
All I see is every week Ren's paid 22 grand or whatever.
And he's lost the game now, so they can't keep saying he's unbeaten in League One.
Thank God, because that's all I used to see in my feed. Would I prefer Nuno back over him? Not sure. I'd probably put him in extremely mid, because while he's doing well with Rennes, I think he's so unbelievably unproven. So I think anything... I'd probably prefer him to Nuno in this case, but he's not any higher than extremely mid.
No, fair enough. And another unproven manager, to say the least, Vincent Kompany.
Weirdly, I quite like Vincent Kompany. I think there was a video of one of his half-time or full-time team talks that was out on Twitter a couple of days ago, and he actually seemed like he knew what he was talking about, and he was confident with the speech that he was making. Like, anyone under Pep is obviously playing well. Arteta, Kompany, they're playing good football. I probably, surprisingly, would put him in not the worst appointment, because if he again is committed to that rebuild, um, then maybe. But again, similar to Frank, De Zerbi, Amorim, that are all in this category, does he have enough credit to be able to get that big jump to a top team? Because obviously, if Burnley came into the Premier League, we don't really know where they'd be playing.
No.
Sort of top, bottom, middle of the table. He might need that jump up to a mid-level club like the Aston Villas, like the West Hams, just to prove himself before getting that big move. Again, it's sort of written in the stars. He'll eventually probably go to City after Pep retires or whatever. But I put him in not the worst appointment because I actually would prefer him to a couple of the other options.
Fair enough. And then last but not least, I wasn't actually going to even talk about this guy because I thought that kind of his chances at top jobs had gone. But then I saw his name mentioned a bit and I thought I might as well throw him in this little quickfire section. Marco Silva.
Yeah.
Doing a good job at Fulham.
Yeah.
But he did fail at Everton.
Yeah, he's doing a good job at Fulham. I think they're in the top half of the table, if I'm wrong.
I think they are.
Yeah, so he's clearly doing all right. Obviously got sent off the other day.
Yes.
Showing his passion though, so
sure.
we like to see that. But yeah, as you say, he did fail at Everton, but let's be honest, who's not failing at Everton at this point? I think it's hard to say. I'd probably put him in not the worst appointment. Okay. I know I'm sitting on the fence with nearly all of these, but again, he's not any. I'd say he's much better than someone like Steve Cooper and Tite that are sort of not proven enough, as Tite especially, with the club level management. But is he better than Poch and Enrique and managers like that? Probably not. So yeah, in that middle tier is where he belongs for me.
Perfect. Right, well, there we go. There are all the potential new Spurs managers ranked. I hope you have enjoyed the video. If you have, click the like button, subscribe and comment and all that. And I'll catch you again in the next video.